Ricky? Fred? We're revolting.
No more than usual.
In the early years of broadcast TV, writers had a lot more limitations as to what kind of stories they were able to tell compared to now. The lack of ability to record programs, as well as the need to have episodes that could be rerun in any order without confusion, made it hard to write any kind of progressing narrative.
It's not like today where we can stream hundreds of episodes of Breaking Bad in a row. TV networks back in the day didn't have the same luxury. Instead, it became common for shows to end essentially exactly where they started, everything conveniently wrapped up within 30 minutes and reverting back to how it was.
And no genre is more well known for this than situational comedy. Many of the most famous sitcoms follow this formula, and some might say it was a large part of their success as they were easy to rerun and only took like a basic knowledge of the premise to understand. So each episode, something wacky will happen to one or more of the characters. There'll be some kind of like teachable moment, and then by the end, everything resets to normality. We like to call this trope the sitcom reset, also known as status quo is God.
But something always felt off to me about how willing these characters were to complete the loop. Like in this episode of The Big Bang Theory where Howard realizes his importance of his bond with Raj. He realizes that he needs to work to be kinder to him, yet at the start of the next episode, everything goes back to how it was. Almost as if he was stuck in the prison of status quo, never willing to change or grow. That rhymed. Who wrote this script? What the f***?
Okay, so no show gives us a better example of the sitcom reset than The Simpsons. The Simpsons is an American sitcom that focuses on...
Okay, I feel like you don't need to describe what The Simpsons are. If they don't know what The Simpsons are, that's kind of on them at this point.
Okay, you're probably right. But anyway, the show has been running for 36 years now with nearly 800 episodes. And in this time, the status quo of the show has remained almost exactly the same. And no matter how many wacky adventures the family goes on, the show always ends with Homer being a drunk and abusive father, Marge is a lonely and overworked housewife, Bart will always be a troubled son shunned for his behavioral issues, and Lisa will always be the younger daughter barred from her own self-expression.
And don't forget Maggie, who's been a literal baby for decades. That sounds like a living nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. And these might seem like over-exaggerated representations of each of the characters, but you need to remember that the original point of The Simpsons was to be a dysfunctional parody of the average American family. Like, these characters were written to be deeply flawed people, and because of the sitcom reset, it means that they have to remain this way forever.
Well, that's not to say that there's absolutely no changes to the Simpsons cast over the years. Like, for example, when Lisa becomes vegetarian despite her family being unsupportive. This is one of the only major changes throughout the show that stays the same.
But the only reason that she even stayed a vegetarian after that episode was because Paul McCartney, who guest starred on the episode and spent a lot of time working on animal rights advocacy, said he would only do the episode if Lisa stuck with her decision. And nearly all of the other changes that any of the other characters go through, they're either reverted by the end of the episode, fairly inconsequential, or they just never mention it again.
Exactly. Like, a character might fall in love or start a new job, but then it's never to be brought up again, except for, like, maybe an occasional mention.
Okay, so one of my favorite episodes of The Simpsons is actually from the latest season, which, okay, don't get me wrong, the new episodes definitely have their issues, but I'm gonna argue that there's actually a lot of decent writing, like the season 36 premiere Bart's Birthday, which explores the idea of the sitcom reset really well.
But the episode technically isn't even canon, right? The episode starts with Conan O'Brien explaining to us that we're watching the final Simpsons episode, created by an AI bot named HackGPT. He claims that the AI scanned every episode and is now going to create the perfect ending to The Simpsons.
Exactly. It's obviously not actually written by AI, but they use this concept to parody TV endings that try to wrap up every plot thread in the finale episode. They show Principal Skinner claim that he's retiring from the school, and the death of Mr. Burns is announced, among other large status quo shifting changes, which would like break the sitcom loop of the show if they were actually canon.
Not only that, but the main plot point of this episode is that it's Bart's 11th birthday. After decades of being a little yellow, spiky-haired little ass, he's finally gonna age. Early on in the episode, there's a clear sense of unease about all of this. The little yellow-haired spends the whole episode watching other characters develop, watching the plot change, and he feels very uneasy about all this. When he gets home, he tells his parents about this and tells them that he's scared.
And that's when Marge and Homer tell him the one thing he never thought he'd hear. that they've been in couples therapy and they're committed to fixing their issues. Which, for a show based on the dysfunction of a family, would drastically break the sitcom loop. And that's when Marge says a line that confirms all of Bart's fears.
From now on, you're going to see a lot of changes.
This is the moment when Bart realizes the truth. This can't be the real world because in the real world, nothing ever changes. Characters don't grow or progress, they never age. The idea that the loop he's been living in for the last 35 years is coming to an end and changing sends him into a spiral, and he runs away crying from home like a little
The AI machine that's writing the episode claims that AI Bart has become sentient and this wasn't intended for the episode. I don't want to spoil everything that happens in the episode because it genuinely is worth watching, but it ends with Bart refusing to blow out the candles on his birthday cake, thus rejecting the change and breaking the system. When the AI system is rebooted, he sees that instead of aging to 11, he's turned 10 again, and all of the other plot changes have been reverted.
Maybe it's like a type of Stockholm syndrome that makes someone sabotage their one chance at changing their fate for the better.
Or maybe he had enough self-awareness that he knew that if the sitcom loop broke, the show would have to end and he would cease to exist.
Do you like Marvel movies?
I mean, not really anymore.
I'm gonna talk about a Marvel TV show. I'm sorry, I know, don't click off, but I promise it's interesting. At the start of WandaVision, we see the Avengers couple Wanda and Vision.
Oh my god, Wanda and Vision, just like the name of the show.
Yes, Kate, like the name of the show. Anyway, the couple is in what appears to be a 50s sitcom as husband and wife in the ideal white picket fence town of Westview.
Which is weird, right? Because didn't Vision literally die in the movie right before this?
Yeah, but he's here, and their sitcom revolves around them essentially being two people with secret powers and having to hide it from all their neighbors and friends.
It makes a pretty obvious premise for a light-hearted sitcom, and the first episode mostly follows suit. Vision has invited his boss over to their house for dinner that evening. However, Wanda has already decided that she was going to set up a sexy evening for her and Vision. And as you can imagine, it gets pretty awkward. However, there's a weird tone shift during the dinner when Wanda and Vision remark that they can't remember where they came from. This is the first indicator that something isn't quite right.
Later on in the meal, Vision's boss starts to choke on some food, whilst his wife seems pretty chill and jovial about all of it, telling him to stop it like it's some sort of act. When the choking continues, Wanda tells Vision to help him in a much more serious tone, kind of breaking the sitcom feel of everything, and seemingly breaking character.
What's even weirder is that after Vision uses his powers to help the boss, everyone just kind of carries on as normal, like nothing's happened. As the credits roll, we can see that the show is being monitored by someone on a screen. The second episode has similar sitcom shenanigans like the first one, but this time there's more of a 60s vibe to everything. More strange occurrences start to happen as Wanda's neighbor Dottie randomly asks Wanda who she really is, or when a staticky radio broadcast asks people who's doing all of this.
It's starting to become clear that the world we're presented with in this show isn't really reality. Subtle character breaks and people questioning their truth start to break the very force that keeps this show together. However, Wanda is determined to keep this show on its sitcom path, involving wacky setups of her and her husband having to hide their powers from their neighbors and friends.
The show continues like this, with each episode transforming the world to fit a different era of sitcoms, as well as changing the format and presentation of the show to fit. Wanda finally has the children that she's always dreamed of, yet they seem to age much faster than normal children, almost as if she's skipping the parts she doesn't want to see.
Eventually, through some Marvel bullshit, we find out that Wanda's the one that has been controlling everything. She has a barrier around Westview and she's using it to create this false reality where everything is going the way she wants. In reality, Vision is dead and she has no children, but in this world she's created, they're alive against their own will.
None of this world is real. Like, even when things start to fall apart as cracks in her magic appear, she simply breaks the rules in order to keep the sitcom loop alive. She's trying to deal with the grief of losing Vision and the life that she dreamed for herself, but when she can't accept the truth, she forces everyone to live her delusions.
After some crazy fights and attempts to break into the barrier, Wanda is forced to remove the barrier and therefore end the show. This releases all the residents and the characters they were forced to play from the town. But this also means that Wanda's children, who never existed in the real world, cease to exist, and Vision, he's dead as hell.
Unlike the Simpsons, who are kept in line through their sitcom loop, Wanda actually uses the one she created to keep the rest of the world in line with her. The show is like a form of escapism for her.
And for a person who's been hurt so much, the idea of a life that stays the same, never changes, everything's good, and at the end of each episode, everything reverts back to how it should be, it seems pretty appealing. Nothing bad can happen if nothing ever happens at all.
But unlike that little yellow Wanda isn't actually a sitcom character, and when her actions affect those around her, she can simply keep on resetting the bad parts.
There's a lot of shows that use the sitcom reset as a trope, but with streaming services becoming the god of the media world, it's less common. Shows are easier to binge now, so it makes sense to have a show that follows a narrative, that changes every episode. However, there's still a lot of media that uses this trope to its advantage, like WandaVision or The Simpsons. And there's always a similarity in the way that when this trope is used, it's a trap in some way, or a prison.
No, literally, there's this insane episode of Fairly Odd Parents, which, if you don't know it, is about this little boy called Timmy, and he's looked after by these two clearly bisexual wish-granting fairies. And in this episode, he admits that he secretly made a wish that nobody on Earth would age so that he could stay a kid forever.
Oh, so instead of most shows which simply ignore the fact that the main character never ages, this show actually gives an in-universe reason for it.
Yeah, which would be fine if it wasn't for the fact that they decided to add the detail that he made this wish 50 years ago. Okay, this is a 60-year-old man, what the hell?
2 bisexual fairies and a 60-year-old man? That sounds like a good time to me. There's also the show Kevin Can F*** Himself, which directly parodies the sitcom reset and shows us what happens when someone tries to break it.
Ethan, babes, I would love for you to tell me about that, but look, the video is about to end. And when it does, we will revert to the way that we must always be.
We will become reborn, yet untouched, forever trapped inside the 4 corners of the screen.
Never to change, or grow, or breathe. Only to be ready to see you guys in the next Red Herring video.
Also, like and subscribe.